Blog Talk Radio.
Bichamo apura kanu apurai kaitnut neye EGUA medinde ojirafo kwesi ranen kata akan akamumain amaruka etipi mu ojirafo. That means greetings to all apurakani apurai kaitni people, meaning Africans, black people. Today is EGUA Day, Marketplace Day. My name is Ojirafo Kwesi Ra Nehin Kata Akan, Ojirafo of the Akamu Nation in North America, Ojiramain Mu within Ojiramain, the purified nation of Apurakani Apurai Kaitni people in the Western Hemisphere. Yet I say we thank you again for tuning in to the broadcast. For those who are new to the broadcast, we have 3 broadcasts on a weekly basis. On Joda Mondays, we have Akanfo Nananom, Ancient Authentic Akan Ancestral Religion, where we deal specifically with the Akan expression of ancestral religion. We deal with that specifically on Joda on Monday nights because, of course, we are an Akan organization, but also because there's a great deal of misinformation being propagated with regard to Akan philosophy, culture, cosmology, ancestral religious practice, ritual practice, morality, and so forth, coming from the Western Hemisphere, as well as individuals on the continent who have been infected with Islam and Christianity and white culture for centuries in certain areas. That misinformation has been woven into the fabric and presentation of the culture, therefore a presentation of an infected culture. So we deal with a purified understanding of Akan, ancient authentic Akan ancestral religion, dealing with the nature of the Great Mother and Great Father, Nyamewa and Nyame, the nature of the Abosom, the forces in nature, the deities, the nature of the Nananom Nsamanfo, the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors of our direct Apurakani Apurakani blood circle, and so forth. So we go into detail about that kind of information on Akanfo Nananom, ancient authentic Akan ancestral religion. On Nada or Abinada, which is Tuesday, we have Ojira, which means purification, and we deal with Nananom Apurakani Apuraikani ancestral religion in general, not just the Akan expression, but ancestral religion. Wherever Apurakani Apuraikani people, or African people, black people, find ourselves in the world, at any time we carry our ancestral religious practices with us. They inform every aspect of our lives, the way we interact with one another, the way we engage, nation building, economic development, cultural development, and so forth. So we go into different texts from ancient Kemet, as well as ritual practices, texts, motifs, and so forth from cultures wherever we find ourselves in the world, including the Western Hemisphere. When we were forced into the Western Hemisphere over the past few centuries during the Musuokesi, the Great Perversity, the enslavement era, those of us who held on to our ancestral religious practices, we were empowered and guided by the Abosom and Nananom Nsamanfo, the deities and ancestresses and ancestors, to wage war against the whites and their offspring, overthrow the enslavement system, and force them into the position of accepting abolition and emancipation. That includes those Apurakani Apuraikani people who maintain our ancestral religion as Hoodoo and Voodoo and Juju and Grigri and all these various forms of ancestral religion in North America, as well as South America, Central America, and the Caribbean. So we deal with Ojira, purification. As we always say, purification, Ojira, operationalizes Nananom. Purification operationalizes our practice of Apurakani Apuraikani ancestral religion, which is the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance. So this is what we deal with on Tuesday nights. On Wednesday nights, of course, EGUA Marketplace Day. And what we have on EGUA Marketplace Day is we typically have individuals, organizations, and institutions who come onto the show and talk about their Apurakani Apuraikani business, organization, or institution, how they are impacting the community in a positive capacity, and how their ancestral religious practices inform their service to the community. So we've had a number of individuals come onto the show, sharing who they are, their journey in ancestral culture and ancestral religion and so forth, and talking about how they founded their businesses, organizations, and institutions, what kind of products and services they provide. They sat with us for 2 hours, engaging us in this fashion, and they're part of the process of our Okom economic development model. We have published the Okom economic development model, and you'll see that link. We can place that link in the chat room right now. And for those who are in the chat room and on the phone line, if you have a question or a comment in the chat room, you need to log in as a user in order to interact in the chat room. If you have a question or comment on the phone line, you need to hit the number 1 so that you can see that your hand is raised, and therefore we can connect with you. Okay, so we just placed our Okom page in the chat room, OKOM, from the website. So when you look at that website, you will see that we have published the Okom economic development model, which we're going to get into tonight. In that Okom economic development model, we have a strategy where we starve the beast and feed the pride. That means we make an assessment on a weekly basis to determine what funds we would have wasted with the whites and their offspring, and then we starve the beast and feed the pride. We take the funds away from those white businesses, reallocate them to the Afurakaini business organization, institution of the week. We are targeting one business organization or institution per week for 52 weeks as part of our Okom economic development model for the purpose of allowing the optimal level of capital being infused into that business. So, of course, if you starve the beast and feed the pride and take the $10 you would have wasted at a white business like Walmart or Starbucks and reallocate that to the business of the week, that's a $10 infusion of capital into that business. If 1,000 of our people engage at that process, then that's a $10,000 infusion of capital into a black business in the course of 1 week, which allows them to expand their services, keep their business open, expand their services, serve our people at a higher capacity, employ more people in the business so that they can, number one, be employed and take care of themselves and their families, and at the same time expand their services to us as the larger Afurakaini community. If we do not engage that process, default, we leave those thousands of dollars and ultimately, collectively, cumulatively, hundreds of billions of dollars in the hands of the whites and their offspring for absolutely no reason. And they therefore enrich themselves off of us, and we are therefore financing our own oppression. So we must engage the process of starving the beast and feeding the pride. And when you look at our Okom economic development model, which we're going to talk about, we deal with that process. When you look on the Okom economic development page, you will see the link to the publication. You can download that publication for free. A 4-part series we did on Blog Talk. You can download those videos for free, as well as 2 other videos dealing with economic development from an ancestral religious perspective. And, of course, Okom economic development model, that's our approach to economic development rooted in our ancestral religious values. You will also see the list of businesses, organizations, and institutions that we have been supporting as a community on a weekly basis. We started that process in the beginning of February. So we're closing in on the 3/4 of a year engaging this process. So you see that list of businesses, organizations, and institutions. You will also see the links to their interviews that they did with us on the show, on the EGUA Marketplace show. And when you scroll down, you can directly click on their interviews. If you missed them, listen to those 2-hour interviews. You can also click on their website and so forth. So that's what we deal with on EGUA Marketplace Day. And we also deal with, on EGUA Marketplace Day, on the shows that we don't have a specific guest, we also talk about economic development from an Afurakaini ancestral religious perspective rooted in our ancestral culture. Of course, our culture, our way of life, our amandre, as it's called in the Akan tradition, the way, mere, of the nation, of the people, Amai, Amambre. Our culture is animated by Nananom. It is animated by ancestral religion. It is informed and animated by ancestral religion. So when we talk about a real culture, we're talking about a way of life that is in harmony with divine order. We establish a social order. That social order is patterned after the divine order of creation. That is our culture. So when you can attune to the divine order of creation, because we can attune to the forces in nature that undergird and animate creation, then only Afro-Kaini people have that capacity. No non-Afro-Kaini people can engage that process. That includes white Europeans, white Americans, white Hindus, white Arabs, white pseudo-Native Americans, who are just Asians, white Hispanics, and so forth. They cannot engage the process of aligning with the forces in nature and then replicating that order. We can be possessed by and communicate with the forces in nature that govern the sun, moons, earth, mother, planets, oceans, rivers, thunder, lightning, fire, black substance of space, and so forth. These divinities are connected to us by blood. So they possess our people through ritual. They communicate with us through divination and various other means, ritual prayer, ritual song, ritual dance, ritual chanting, and so forth. We infuse and download that information directly from them, and then we replicate that divine order they have provided to us through that communication when structuring our social order. And then we live in harmony with that order that has been established. When we live in harmony with that order that has been established, we are engaged in culture, amambe, a way, de, of the Oman, of the nation, but it is rooted in and animated by the forces in nature, by our ancestral religion. So this is what we're dealing with when we talk about rooted in our ancestral religious values, an approach to economic development rooted in our ancestral religious values. So we're going to put a direct link to the Okom economic development model in the chat room, and we're also going to put another link to the Hoodoo Mind page. So let's put that in there as well. So we're going to get into that. Okay, so those links are in the chat room. Okay, just give me 1 second. I want to make sure we have everything in here. All right, and for the individuals who have just come into the chat room and on the phone line, if you have a question or a comment, just hit the number 1 on the phone line so that we can see that your hand is raised. If you have a question or a comment in the chat room, you must log in as a user in the chat room. If you don't have a username, you can sign up for one very quickly in Blog Talk. And just give me 1 more second. We just want to make sure we have this right information. And that's almost it. All right, so that information is in there. All right, so as we said for the introduction, the promo for the show, we're talking about a Hoodoo economy, socioeconomic development through Hoodoo. So why are we talking about a Hoodoo economy? Well, the business, organization, institutions, as we said, of the week that we target one per week, every week as a community. This week and also into next week, there are multiple businesses, and the reason there are multiple businesses, and you can get to all of them as we update our site, is because of our Hoodoo Mind, Hoodoo Nation Festival. This is our first annual festival dealing with the Hoodoo religion, the Akan ancestral religion brought to North America in the blood circles of our ancestresses and ancestors. So we are having our first annual Hoodoo Nation Festival, Hoodoo Mind. Hoodoo, of course, is the name of the tradition, religion, and so forth. And Mind means nation. So Hoodoo Mind means the Hoodoo Nation. This festival is an all-day festival from 12 p.m. to 7 p.m. on October 17th in Washington, D.C. It is a free event for the entire Afro-Akan family and Afro-Akan family only. All ages for Afro-Akan people. So we will have an EGUA, a marketplace, vendors, dealing with vendors and natural products, handmade products, soaps, herbs, various different things. We will also have workshops, presentations. We will be doing a presentation on Hoodoo, the Akan Ancestral Religion in North America. We will also have presentations on natural herbs and healing products and so forth, and natural medicine. So that information, we will be putting the rest of the information, updating the website. When you go to the Hoodoo Mind site, you will see the Hoodoo Mind flyer, which you can download and share. You will see 2 of our broadcasts where we were talking about the nature of the festival and so forth. You can download those YouTube videos. You will also see the information we will be publishing a Hoodoo Mind journal, Hoodoo Nation Festival Journal, which will be given out for free to everyone who attends the event. In that journal, we will have articles on Hoodoo, articles on ancestral culture, certain ritual practices. We will also have a list of all of the vendors that are taking part in the festival and their products and services and so forth. Then some other people have taken out ads in the Hoodoo Mind journal. We initially had the deadline to submit ads, the JPEG file for your ad, so you can have your ad in the journal. Initially, that was last week. Bumped it up because we had a few more people, and we're actually still in the final stages of finishing the publication. So if you still have an ad you would like to place in the journal, the final deadline is October 9th. We have to have the JPEGs in by October 9th because once we get those in, those will be the last thing that we have. We're already completing the other information as far as the articles and the, information about ancestral culture and so forth in the journal. The last piece is when a few more people send those ads, those JPEG files, and we can take those files, insert them in the document, and then we can begin to print. But we need to get those ads in by October 9th. So if you would like to place an ad for your business, organization, or institution in our journal, it's an 8.5 by 11 magazine size journal. We print the journal in color, and of course it will be given out for free. So there will be actually thousands of people exponentially, because when you have many people coming out, hundreds of people coming out to the event over the course of 7 hours all day long, some coming to shop and then others shopping with the vendors, but also staying for the presentations. We have a live food vendor. We have natural soaps, shea butter, cocoa butter, herbs, books, natural, handmade clothing, a number of different things, art. So people will be, shopping with the vendors, but they will also participating with regard to the presentations. You will have hundreds of people getting the journal, but then when they leave the event and go share the journal with their friends, family members, coworkers, and so forth, exponentially, your ad in the journal will reach thousands of people. At the same time, we will have an ebook version of the journal that will be on the Hoodoo Mind site once it is published. That will be a free download. That means thousands of people will see your ad as well when they download it. And of course, that free ebook journal will be on the site permanently. We have, over the past 12-month period, we just began our New Year, September. That was our New Year's Day, the first day of our year of 13,016. So over the past 12-month period, from our previous New Year, September 22nd, to this New Year, September 23rd, we had over 1.34 million hits to our website. So we have, many, many people coming to the site, and when they come to these new pages on the site, they will see your ad in the journal, whether you would like to pick out an ad for your business, organization, or institution, or if you would like to place a personal ad in support of the work that we are doing, or a personal ad in support of ancestral culture, ritual practice, Afro-Akani people, something encouraging for our people. Adinkra symbols or information about ancient Kemet, different things like that. If you like to place one of those personal ads, you can do so as well. When you look on the webpage, you will see the information for that. We have 1/4 page ad, 1/2 page ad, full page ad options. The 1/4 page is $25, 1/2 page is $35, a full page ad is $50. So all of that information is there. You can get all the details on the page, on the Hoodoo Mind page. And you'll also see that we have a link for those who would like to be vendors. We have about 3 spaces left for vendors. A vending table is $25. We supply the 6-foot table and 2 chairs. So the vendor registration application is on the Hoodoo Mind page as well. So you can go directly to that. Again, we only have a few spaces left, so if you would like to then fill out that application and email it to us, you can make the payment on the page. And the same with the ads. We must get the ads in by October 9th. The last few tables are first come, first served. So all of that information is on the page, and we will be, once we have the journal published by the 9th, really the 10th, we get the last few ads on the 9th, and we'll release it on the 10th. The ebook version on the 10th, then meaning this coming weekend, you'll see that information, and then we will also update the community and put the itinerary for the scheduling of the event. Of course, the vending event is all day long. The marketplace is all day long. You can come in and out however many times you would like. But then the schedule of events as far as the speakers, presentations, and so forth, we will have that itinerary. We will post it on the page. We also have a Hoodoo Mind page that we created on Facebook. So you can, and that link is on this page as well, so you can go and like our page on Facebook and share our page on Facebook and, connect with people. We did an event notification on Facebook, so you can add people to that event notification and let them know that this is an event that they can attend. So all that information is there. That is important for the nature of the topic for today. The title of the broadcast tonight, Hoodoo Economy, Socioeconomic Development through Hoodoo. And we just gave an introduction to that with regard to the Hoodoo Nation Festival, just by virtue of the fact that we have an EGUA, a marketplace, where people are selling products and or services that are born within the community, fashioned within the community for the purpose of serving the community, fulfilling the needs of the community, meeting the needs of the community. So our ancestral religion gives birth to industry, gives birth to activities, various forms of economic activity and social activity that serves the needs, the specific needs of the people, of the nation, of the Oman. So we say in the introduction to the show, we address the socioeconomic development through Hoodoo. Hoodoo is the ancestral religion of Akan people in North America. As our ancestresses and ancestors brought their ancestral religion with them during the 4th migration to North America, they also brought the socioeconomic foundation born of the religion, which led to the development of various industries: agriculture, medicine, weaponry, education, training, engineering, and more. As we re-embrace our ancestral religion, we are naturally guided by the Abosom, the deities who govern us, and our Nananom Nsamanfo, our spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors, towards fields of endeavor that reflect our conscious energy complex. We thus are naturally inclined to industrialize within these fields. This is the Hoodoo economy. So when we're talking about the spiritual and religious foundation for culture, that includes an economy, that includes a socio-economic foundation. When people are children, for example, of a specific force in creation, a specific Abosom, we're going to talk about the divinity Ptah, for example, or Boadie, as he's called in Akan. Boadie comes from Poata, Poate, or Ptah from ancient Kemet, and Kanat, Egypt and Nubia, and so forth. the same divinity. He is called Obaluae in the Yoruba tradition, and Sakpata, the male Sakpata twin in Vodun. A divinity such as Ptah, the fashioner of the earth, the fashioner of created entities, the master craftsman operating at the center or the core of earth, constantly fashioning the core, therefore shaping the earth and its forms and so forth. When you're a child of such a divinity, you have that natural inclination because you carry his energy, that work of fashioning. He operates at the core of earth as well as the core of the person, the fire inside the marrow of the bones and so forth, constantly fashioning. So people who are craftsmen, sculptors, also engineers, fashioning matter, fashioning material, fashioning elements for the benefit to fulfill the needs of the society. Fashioning with regard to artistic creation, fashioning with regard to engineering, that's a natural process. Just like the cells in your body, the stem cells in your body are those engineers within the body, within the bone marrow and so forth, constantly fashioning and strengthening and developing that structural foundation, skeletal system for your body. The same is true within the great divine body of the Supreme Being. So you have Ptah engaged, that spiritual force engaged in that work of fashioning, crafting, engineering. People who are governed by that divinity, they are naturally drawn to such activity, just like your stem cells are naturally drawn to such activity. So that manifests in the society, that manifests in the Oman, in the nation, within the Afurakani Afrikaidi nation, somebody naturally drawn towards a crafting guild or an engineering guild and so forth, engaging that process. They're taking elements, going out into woods, going out into the desert, going out into forest regions, in savanna regions, gathering whatever elements are in nature and moving to fashion them into forms, into structures, into implements that we need to execute our function in creation that benefit all of society. So that natural spiritual inclination rooted in the nature of the person, rooted in their divine function, their alignment with the deity that governs their spiritual head, it manifests societally as not only an activity or a natural inclination of an activity, but it becomes industrialized and becomes part of the economy of the nation. And it's a socio-economy because our social order is rooted in the divine order of creation, as we said, and that is a civilization. You have a civilization or civilized society, you have a social order pattern after the divine order of creation. So we attune to the forces of nature. We are in alignment with that divine order that they are always manifesting as they move through creation. Once we get in that flow of divine order, then we replicate that flow of divine order when we establish a social order. Therefore, we have a civilization. The whites and offspring do not have civilizations, and they cannot have civilization. They cannot have a social order rooted in the divine order of creation because they cannot attune to the forces of nature that undergird the divine order of creation. So therefore, they cannot replicate that order. All they can do is imitate what we're doing, but they can't communicate with the force of nature and take that information and replicate it when they're building a society. So they create societies, but we create civilization. They create uncivilized societies. We create civilized societies. So inside of our society, we have industry and industries, and those industries are manifest through what people are engaged in, the kind of activity people are engaged in. What kind of activity are people engaged in, social and economic? It is rooted in the function that they are to execute in creation. What force of nature governs their head? What patriclan and matriclan divinities empower and guide them? What ancestral clans are they from? And how it all intertwines and interfaces with one another. So we have the intersection of ancestral religion, the functioning of the divinities, the guidance of the ancestresses and ancestors impacting the individual so that they move towards their natural inclination to engage in specific forms of activity. Those specific forms of activity support the nation, support the people, and those forms of activity are therefore industrialized and they become industries within the nation. That is the foundation of an ancestral economy. That is, and of course, when we're talking about hoodoo, that is a hoodoo economy. And that's across the board, no matter whether it's hoodoo or juju or candomblé or whatever it is. But when we're talking about hoodoo, for example, in North America, the Akan tradition in North America, and of course we published our book, Hoodoo People, Afura Akanu, Afura Ikanu, in North America, Akan, custodians of hoodoo from ancient Hoodoo Ndunu land, Kanit, Nubia. So we've proved that the term Ndu, meaning medicine, also meaning to conjure, root medicine, root work, conjuring, and so forth, is where the term hoodoo comes from. We maintain the term from our Akan language for ritual practices, ritual prayers, and so forth, spirit possession, divination, all these various things we maintain from our Akan ancestral culture into North America. And then we also trace it back to the term Undu in ancient Kanit, Nubian Kemet, meaning root medicine, root work, offering, ritual communication with divinities, conjure, and so forth. Even the name of ancient Nubia, one of the titles is the Undu land and the Undu people. So we trace all of that in our book. But when we're talking about our Hoodoo Mind Festival, this is part of that process. Establishing a festival, establishing a cultural institution to institutionalize the values of the people. That is key to nation building. Ancestral, the fourth principal value of nation building is establishing institutions, the institutionalization of our values, training institutions, cultural institutions, educational institutions, ritual institutions, spiritual, religious institutions, and so forth, so that the value of the culture is perpetuated. So we talked about cultural institutions and the Hoodoo Festival, Hoodoo Nation Festival as a cultural institution and why it's key to maintaining our alignment with order as a group, as a people. But then when we talk about this notion of socioeconomic development through Hoodoo, just by virtue of the fact that we engage in a specific practice, have specific ritual practices called Hoodoo and the manner in which we engage them, and certain things that we use with regard to ancestral religious practice, certain kinds of clothes that we will wear as part of our ancestral culture, part of our morality, part of our functioning in the world as Afurakani, Afurakani people from a specific ancestral clan. All those things have to be developed. All those things have to be industrialized. So, for example, we have the various vendors. When people practice hoodoo, that includes using plants, herbs, mineral life, and so forth, engaged in the process of healing people. But of course, we have to procure the plants, procure the herbs, the mineral life, and so forth. There needs to be training on how to utilize these plants, these herbs, this mineral life. So we have individuals who procure this medicine, extract the medicine from the plant life, the herbs, train people. That's all part of industry. We have individuals who create natural soap, procure natural shea butter, cocoa butter, whip the shea butter, whip the cocoa butter, and so forth. Those things are used for not only moisturizer and healing and a number of different things, but that is part of industry. It's something that we use. We don't want to use chemicals from the whites and their offspring. That's not part of our ancestral culture. That's not part of our moral code. Living in harmony with divine order. If you have the capacity to take something natural to moisturize your skin, coming directly from the earth mother and so forth, utilizing shea butter or cocoa butter or other related products, aloe vera and so forth, or you're going to go get some chemical concoction from a pharmaceutical company like some, Luciderm lotion or Jergens or something like that, and put those chemicals in your pore. If you can't consume it, you really don't want to put it in your pore. Shea butter can be used for cooking. Cocoa butter is used for cooking, but it can also be used as a moisturizer and skin tone and everything else. Other pharmaceutical-made lotions, manufactured lotions, chemically mixed lotions can't be used for cooking and consumption and so forth. So if we're going to use something that's used every single day, but then we need to procure that, and it's part of our moral code, it's part of our ancestral culture to utilize things on our bodies and in our bodies that are natural, and procuring them in a harmonious way, in a respectful way from nature. When people engage that process and get those products to our people, that becomes an industry. Our ancestral culture has become industrialized, it has become economized, and so forth. So we're talking about the socioeconomic development through hoodoo, the socioeconomic foundation rooted in ancestral culture that give birth to specific industries. When somebody is governed by a specific Abosom of fertility. So you have, for example, Nana Akua, the Abosom, female Abosom that governs Akua Dao Wednesday, the planet Akua, and Awuku, so-called Mercury. She's Akua in Akan, that's a popular name. She's called Nebet Het in ancient Kemet. She's called Agaberu in Yoruba. Of course, her husband is Set in ancient Kemet, so you have Set and Nebet Het. In Akan, you have Awuku and Akua, or Kweku Anansi and Akua. In Yoruba, you have Eshu, Legba, and Agberu, the wife of Legba, and so forth. But Akua, Agberu, Nebet Het, same divinity. In Akan culture, Akua, you'll often see the Akua Badal that's in the form of an Ankh, and of course that Ankh shaped with the ovular head and the two arms sticking straight out very often in the straight body. That comes directly from the Ankua from ancient Kemet. It's the Akua in Akan, the exact same talisman, the exact same use. We did an entire article on Akua, and we went into detail showing that the Akuaba and the Ankh is the same entity in name and in function, used for fertility purposes, for funerary practices, as well as on shrines for deities and ancestral spirits in Akan culture today, as well as in ancient Kemet and Kana. So we talked about that in our book, Ankh, the Origin of the Term, Yoga, Karakasa, the Origin and Nature of the Chakra, as well as in the article on Akua, the Abosom of Akua Da, and so forth. But Akua also means fertility. Akua also means a fertile land, plantation. And Akuafo or Akuafo means agriculturalist or farmer. So we're talking about a fertile divinity. When you see Nebet Het, she is the wet nurse of Heru. She's suckling Heru. She governs the rain waters of earth, which are nourishing, and the dew and so forth that are nourishing, excretory functions, nourishing the earth and so forth. She's dealing with fertility. So this is why Akua also means plantation, and Akuafo are the group of people, folk, who engage in the Akua process, fertility, agriculture, and so forth. So when you have somebody who's a child of that divinity, they're naturally inclined towards agricultural activity, naturally from the time they were children, because they're governed by that energy complex that animates that fertile land, that fertile plantation type land. Then they're naturally drawn to work that kind of land and generate that kind of fertility and maintain that kind of fertility and not allow the land to become, degenerate and arid and so forth and no longer able to produce. They are the type that will learn how to maintain the fertility of the land season after season after season, year after year, decade after decade, century after century, and so forth. So when you have people who are naturally inclined in that fashion, when they move towards that because they have a cultural support, people recognize that within their spirit and their structures, mechanisms in place within the culture to facilitate their development, then that desire, that natural inclination, which is written into their krawa, the soul by the divinity, that becomes an industry. So you have an agricultural industry, maintaining arable land, maintaining fertile land, not poisoning that fertile land, not, desecrating that sacred fertile land, producing products, crops, and so forth, of course, for our consumption as well as for medicine and as well as for clothing, cotton and things like that, hemp and other things like that, for other products, for natural products to be used, all these various things coming from the fertile land. So once again, we have the Abosom impacting someone, animating someone, motivating them in a certain specific direction to execute a certain specific function in creation for the good of the society. And then that natural inclination rooted in their ancestral and spiritual identity becomes an industry, becomes part of the economy. This is part of the Hoodoo Economy. So all the various things that we engage in are connected in that fashion. because we're connected to the Abosom. Every Afro-Akani person is governed by Abosom that governs their head and so forth, and leads them naturally, intrinsically, towards a specific set of activities, and those things must be recognized and incorporated within the fabric of the culture. And of course, our ancestral religious practices capture that, and our culture is animated by the ancestral religious practices, so they capture that as well, and this is why we can establish a cohesive, orderly society that replicates the divine order of creation. Just like the forces in nature are animating the suns, moons, stars, planets, earth, mother, oceans, rivers, and so forth, and they're interacting and interfacing harmoniously without conflict. When you have children of the Abosom, the forces in nature, when they align with those forces, then they interact with one another in the nation, in the society, in the same fashion that the divinities interact with one another in creation. So then we have a harmonious society, constantly flowing in harmony with divine order. So this is what we're talking about with the connection, and no matter what it is, whether it's agriculture, we use that example, medicine, weaponry, education, training, engineering, and more. This is the foundation. So let's get to a cosmological foundation. And for those who are, if you're on the phone line, you have a question or comment, hit the number 1. In the chat room, you must log in order to interact. So what we're going to go to real quick is we're going to put the link in the chat room right now. The Shabaka Stone, Shabaka text from Ancient Kemet. We're going to check that out. And also, before we get to that, we've just put the link in the chat room. If you look in our Okom economic development model, just to reiterate and just to point out where that section is, if you look on page, actually it's on page 1 of the Okom economic development model. We just put the link in the chat room. We're talking about the nature of Okom in the Akan language. We say in the Akan language, the term Okom means hunger or want of something. This term is related to Akom, referencing spirit possession, as well as Nkom, referencing spirit communication. These terms have their roots in our ancestral language of ancient Kanit, Nubia, and Kemet, Egypt, where we find Kom meaning to embrace, to possess, seize, become possessed by a deity. So then we show the Medutu, the hieroglyphs of the term Kom in Kemet, and of course the determinative symbol is 2 arms in the form of embracing or seizing something. So the term Kom, written in the Medutu, the hieroglyphs of ancient Kemet, in the language of Kemet, meaning Kom, meaning to possess, become possessed by a deity, to embrace, to seize. This is why in our Akan culture today, Okom means possession. So then we say the term Okom is comprised of the terms Ko and Mu. Komu becomes Komu and Kom. Ko means to go and Mu means within. Thus, Komu or Kom means to go within. Komu. This references hunger, desire for the going within or consumption, possession of food and medicine. That's going within your system. Komu, going within, hunger, possession. For our sustenance, healing, building, and protection. But as well as the spirit of an Abosom or Osamai, a deity or ancestral spirit, going within, Komu, or possessing the individual for spiritual sustenance, spiritual healing, building, and protection. The hunger, Kom, possession, Kom, is our hunger for possessing food or medicine for sustenance, healing, building, and protection. But then you also have that possession where not food is entering into the system or medicine is not entering into the system, but the spirit of a divinity, the spirit of an ancestral spirit possessing, entering into the physical vehicle of the person for our spiritual sustenance, spiritual healing, building, and protection. In a natural sense, Okom references our innate inclination to possess that which we need to sustain ourselves, heal ourselves, protect ourselves, develop ourselves, govern ourselves, shelter ourselves, and clothe ourselves. So when you have a hunger for something, calm, you have a natural desire, inclination to possess something. You want to possess that which you need to sustain yourself, heal yourself, protect yourself, develop yourself, govern yourself, shelter yourself, and clothe yourself. Constellation of 7 needs resounds the 7 principal values of Ama Ancestry or nation building restoration for Afro-Akaini people as delineated within Akwamu Maina Marokai Tifimu, the Akwamu Nation in North America. So we have established 7 principal values of nation building based on the deities that govern the cycle of the 7-day week, the sun, moon, and planets that move in a specific cyclical pattern every 7 days. They govern all natural cycles on Earth. They also govern the circa-septon cycle within the body, the chronobiological cycle, where your body goes through specific physiological changes every 7 days. So on a cellular level, you have a 7-day cycle. On Earth, there is a 7-day cycle. So the deities that govern the sun, moon, and planets that animate that 7-day cycle, we have a principal value connected to each one of those solar, lunar, and planetary bodies and the forces that govern them. So that set of 7 principal values is a holistic set connected to the deities that govern all natural cycles on Earth and within your physical body as an Afro-Akaini individual. Therefore, it is a holistic set of 7 principal values powered by the Abosom that govern them. So the constellation of 7 needs to be able to sustain ourselves, heal ourselves, protect ourselves, develop ourselves, govern ourselves, shelter ourselves, and clothe ourselves, that constellation of 7 needs resounds the 7 principal values of nation building. And those 7 principal values are establishing 1, methods of food production and preservation, 2, methods of curing disease, 3, establishing a military structure for the defense of our nation, 4, establishing institutions of education, training, and cultivation, institution building, 5, establishing sound systems of governance and jurisprudence rooted in our ancestral culture, of course. And of course, that culture is animated, as we said, by the divinities, by the ancestral religion. 6, establishing and the construction of homes on acquired land. And 7, the production of clothing. So those 7 principal values reverberate the constellation of 7 needs that we have. Innate inclination manifests as Okom, directs us to address these needs in harmony with Nyame Wa, Nyame and Sheshe, the great mother and great father's divine order. The 7 principal values of Ama Ancestry are thus organized according to the Abosom, the deities, spirit forces in creation divine, who govern the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies which govern the 7-day week. This natural and perpetual 7-day cycle informs the natural manner in which we must function in the world. It is thus the spiritual foundation of our economic model. And so when you look at that information, that simply gives more nuanced detail to this notion of what a hoodoo economy is, where we're talking about all the various things we need when we engage in the practice of hoodoo, as well as other forms of ancestral religions in practice. When we engage the practice of hoodoo, there are specific industries that are born of hoodoo. Certain kinds of clothing, certain kinds of natural soaps and shea butters and cocoa butters and everything we need on a daily basis, hair care products, toothpaste, medicine, whether it's natural medicine, the kind of things that you can have in your home to take care of just about every illness that your family will have, children as well as adults. Most people, when they have an illness, they don't run immediately to the hospital. Most things are taken care of in the home. We have gotten away from our natural practices and dealing with natural ways to overcome specific illness. And we just go directly to the pharmaceutical chemical concoctions that are sold in drugstores and everything else. But when we get back to our natural way of healing, whether we're using aloe vera, or we're using ginger, or we're using different tinctures created, rooted in our ancestral culture, that take care of congestion, take care of sore throat, to take care of pink eye, or take care of a toothache, or take care of stomach ache, or arthritis, or other kinds of swelling, or various different things. These things are born out of our culture, our practice of hoodoo, and then they manifest as an industry that becomes part of an economy. All these things have to be produced. So that clothing, even weaponry for defense, medicine, certain kinds of food that we need to stay away from all these pastries and all these other things that the whites are offering to produce. We produce food, but then we also, access agricultural products, and we establish our own farmland. We'll be naturally drawn to engage that process. Those who are akuafo or okuafo farmers, agriculturalists, and so forth, they'll be naturally inclined towards establishing large, quote-unquote, plantations and producing the kind of food that is in harmony with us, that does not create a dietary taboo for us and so forth, that are not dietary taboos, all these different things must be produced so we can sustain ourselves in the practice of our ancestral religion. So the practice of our ancestral religion gives birth to various forms of industry, and that's the Hoodoo economy. Then we talk about our collective identity. And even before we get into that collective identity, we're going to get into the cosmological foundation from a text in ancient Kemet to see how this unfolds. We're going to go to the Shabaka stone, and we're going to read a section from that. We're not going to read the whole thing, and so you can see exactly how this is the cosmological foundation that undergirds this notion of a Hoodoo economy or an ancestral religious economy. Now, Ptah, as we said, is the fashioner of earth. And let's go down. And we just put the link in the chat room for the one of the various translations of the Shabaka text. Okay, so and just to give some of that background, the Shabaka stone, dedicated by one of the Khaniti kings, so-called Kushite kings, Nubian kings during the 26th dynasty, Shabaka. The specific stone, the stela, 92 by 138 centimeters in size. The text is arranged in 62 vertical columns and 2 horizontal rows across the top. 23 of the columns have been worn away. The text is much older than this stone version, probably dating back to the so-called New Empire, New Kingdom, and so forth. The center of the Ptah, the sanctuary of Ptah, was Min-Nefer, which at many times in ancient Kemet was the center of governance for a while. Sometimes the center of governance shifted during the time of Hop, the bull, and Ptah. You'll have Min-Nefer as the center of governance. When we moved into the sign of the ram, then you have Ta'apet, or so-called Thebes, being the root of government, the sanctuary of government, shifting there. But Min-Nefer is the sanctuary of Ptah, the union equilibrating point of the two lands of the north and the south, from the Delta region to the southern region. All right. So this is why sometimes they call it the Memphite theology, or Memphis, which is the corruption of Min-Nefer. What he actually says in the text, before we get down to the portion we want to focus on, in the text itself, they give some honorific title and then talks about, how the stone itself came about. So it says from the beginning, the living Heru who prospers the two lands, Wachet and Nekebet, the two tutelary divinities of the north and south, who prospers the two lands, the golden Heru who prospers the two lands, the king of upper and lower Kemet, Nefer Ka Ra, the son of Ra Shabaka, beloved of Ptah, south of his wall, who lives like Ra forever. This writing was copied out anew by His Majesty in the house of his father, Ptah, south of his wall, for His Majesty found it to be a work of the Ancestresses and Ancestors, which was worm-eaten, so that it could not be understood from the beginning to end. His Majesty copied it anew, so that it became better than it had been before, and in order that his name might endure and his monument last in the house of his father Ptah, south of his wall, throughout eternity as a work done by the son of Ra, Shabaka, for his father, Ptah Tadmin, so that he might live forever. So what Shabaka is saying here, that even though it was like the 26th dynasty, they came across this text, and he recognized it was a text that had been written by the ancestresses and ancestors. It was an ancient text, but it was so old that it had been worm-eaten, that particular text. So what he did was he decreed that this text be, that was on this worm-eaten papyrus or whatever, he decreed that that text be carved out on a stone so it could last forever, so it would endure, and also so that his name would endure as Shabaka, the son of Ra, but that his name would endure because he did this for his father, Ptah, the divinity Ptah. Of course, his desire for it to last for quote-unquote eternity is real, because we are reading it thousands of years later. He did this for us, for his posterity, for his direct descendants, and we have access to this text. So what he did back then to make it endure, to make it last, it is last. And now we are reading from it and being informed from it once again. So this is the background behind the Shabaka stone. So when he says it was a work of the ancestresses and ancestors, that does not mean that Min-Nefer or Min-Fight theology came into being in the region of Min-Nefer, very recently, and there were different sections of Kemet and different centers, spiritual centers that had different ideas about the cosmology and the creation of the world, and they had conflicting accounts that appeared idiots. Only Negroes who worshiped the white sun offspring will talk about there were different accounts. One group believed that Ra was the supreme being, and one believed that Amen was, and one believed that Ptah was, and one believed that Atem was, coming from white Egyptologists who have no knowledge of the culture, and Negroes who worship these people and take that Eurocentric nonsense, place it in blackface, and then repeat it as though it's intelligent. When you hear people talking about different creation accounts, and they're conflicting, and they came from different ethnic groups within ancient Kemet, and they had conflicting understandings of who the deities were, that's when you have Negroes who have no knowledge of the culture. All these different aspects of the creative process, as we did a 5-part series on the Tepi, the creation of the world. We talked about the cosmogony from Ta'apet, or so-called Thebes, and Kemenu, or so-called Hermopolis, Anu, so-called Heliopolis, also, of course, Min-Nefer, so-called Memphis. Each one of these creation accounts is dealing with a stage in the development of the unfolding of creation, beginning with the primordial 8 divinities governed by Amen and Amenet, that's dealt with in the so-called Theban or Ta'apet cosmogony, as well as the Kemenu cosmogony, or so-called Hermopolitan cosmogony. And then you get to cosmogony of Anu, when you're talking about the birth of Ra, of course, Ra as well, and then Atem, and then you get to Min-Nefer with Ptah, fashioning the world. So let's check out this section dealing with Ptah. We're not going to go through the whole piece. We're going to get to the part that's relevant to what we're talking about tonight. So you go down about 2/3 of the way down, almost a little bit more than halfway down. So they're talking about the divinities who came into being in Ptah. They talk about Ptah, this title, Ptah Nun, the father who made Atem. And then they have a few more titles, a couple of things are scratched out. But the piece we want to get to is here. There took shape in the heart. There took shape on the tongue, the form of Atem. And Atem is another divinity. For the very great one is Ptah, who gave life to all of the divinities and their Kau, their Kas, their souls, and so forth, through his heart and through his tongue, in which Heru had taken shape within Ptah, in which Tehuti had taken shape in Ptah. So when you're talking about the heart and the tongue, just like you're a being, you have a heart, you have a tongue. Imagine, and you have a brain with a cerebral cortex, but then under the cerebral cortex is the limbic portion, which is called the cap. When you look at Ptah, and he has his skull cap on, Ptah operates through the brain and so forth. Ptah has a skull cap, that's the limbus of the brain. And then on top of the skull cap or the limbus is the gray, whitish, grayish, fleshy area, the two hemispheres called the cerebral cortex. And they talk about Ptah and Anebhech is his sacred sanctuary, the white walls of the White House. And of course, the seat of government being called the White House, or the Anebhech, the house of Ptah. Of course, in America, the White House is the seat of government because it's the same thing. This is where they got it from. This is where they stole it from and corrupted it from. But the White House of Ptah that he dwells in is the whitish, grayish, fleshy area of the cerebral cortex. Up under that is the limbic portion of the brain, the cap. You see Ptah with the skull cap on. He's operating through the formative power of the brain as well as the formative power within the marrow, within the blood, and that's all connected. And we did a broadcast specifically on Ptah where we go into detail about all of that. So Ptah is the fashioner, and then Atem comes out of Ptah and executes this function as well. And then you have Heru and Tahuti operating as well. So you have Ptah within the body operating through the formative power of the brain. Then you have the heart. Heru is operating through the heart, and Tahuti as the spokesperson operating through the tongue. So you have these different organs all working together within the body. In the same fashion, in the great divine body of the Supreme Being, you have them operating in the same area. So you have Ptah fashioning the formative thoughts and so forth within the brain. He's fashioning thoughts, ideas, desires, and so forth. You have the heart region and the tongue, and they're talking about Heru. And again, it says there took shape in the heart, that took shape on the tongue to form about 10. For the very great one is Ptah, who gave life or form to all of the divinities and their cause, their souls, through his heart and through his tongue, in which Heru has taken shape as Ptah in the heart, in which Tahuti has taken shape within Ptah as the tongue. Thus, heart and tongue rule over all the limbs in accordance with the teaching that it, the heart, is in every body, and it, the tongue, is in every mouth of all deities, all men and women, all cattle, all creeping things, whatever lives, thinking whatever it wishes and commanding whatever it wishes, thinking or formulating whatever it wishes, talking about the heart, and commanding whatever it wishes, talking about the tongue. So when we talk about the heart and the tongue, you're developing these desires within the heart, and then you speak those things that you desire, because the heart is called Ab in Kemet, but then the word for desire and thirst is also Ab. Of course, the heart is not just talking about the desire of love and affection and so forth, and you feel your heart move when you have an affection for someone, but it's also dealing with desire and thirst. Why would the heart be associated with thirst? The heart is constantly pulling in blood, drinking, quote-unquote, blood, and sending that blood and pumping it out throughout all of the body. And, of course, the blood carries life force, energy, and so forth, so it's constantly regulating the flow of blood to the body, every cell in the body, and regulating the flow of divine living energy to every cell in the body. So it's constantly drinking or thirsting, quote-unquote, that blood and constantly sending it out. Its palpitations are based on what's taking place. If you need to get fired up because something is happening and there's a fight or flight situation, then the heart begins to pump very rapidly, and there's a great deal of blood sent to a certain area, because what's happening within the heart is dictating what's going to take place. So you have this generation of energy within the heart, that generation of that, manifest desire and so forth, and then the tongue repeats what's within your heart. So the heart and the tongue govern or rule over all of the limbs, generated within the heart, spoken through the tongue, and then you operate and so forth. So this is what they're talking about. In accordance, so it says thus heart and tongue rule over all of the limbs, talking about Heru and Tahuti, ruling over the limbs, in accordance with the teaching that it, the heart, is in every body, and it, the tongue, is within every mouth of all deities, men and women, cattle, creeping things, whatever lives, thinking whatever the heart and wishes, and commanding whatever the tongue wishes. Ptah's paut, or his company of divinities, is before him in teeth and lips. procreative fluid and the hand of Atem. And remember Atem and the hand of Atem, Asaset Nebethetepet, the great mother, Asase, she's called Asase Apu in Akan, she's called Asaset Nebethetepet, the wife of Atem. She is also called the hand of the God. Remember, we talked about that in a previous broadcast, because the vagina is like a hand, it grasps. So the divinity, she's like they call her the hand of the divinity, because when Atem and Asaset unite and copulate, of course, the vagina structure is a third hand that the female has that pulls the seminal fluid out of the male, showing simply that she is an active participant in the procreative process. She's just not like a passive shell that just lays there and lets the man's divine seed fill her up. You know, you have in these pseudo-religions, patriarchal religions, pseudo-patriarchal religions, fake religions, that the female is just passive subject and the male has all of the divinity. The male is the divine seed, or the ovum is just a dead cell until the sperm comes and gives it life. And until that happens, then the ovum is just a dead, weak cell. That's dissexual in reality, insane. The female is an active participant in the creative process. Even from the beginning, the female has that magnetic capacity to draw the male to her. That's activity. That's not passive. That's an active participant in the union. The ovum, of course, draws the sperm cell to it magnetically. That's active participation. The female vagina draws the male to her and pulls the seed out of the male through contraction. So again, she's the hand of the divinity. When you look at the hand of the divinity, it's a sacred hand. This is what they're talking about, the vaginal structure, in a divinized fashion. Asaset Nebethetepet, the hand of the divinity. So when it says, the wife and offspring will say the semen in the hands of Atem, because they will have promoted the idea that Atem masturbated to create God, Shu, and Testament. Of course, they know that's inaccurate, but they're trying to force their sexual perverse nature, sexual deviant nature into our text. But they also know that Asase Nebethetepet literally is called the hand of the God. That's her title. And we still use that language today, because a man will literally say, Afurakani man will literally say of his Afurakani wife that she is my right hand. We've been saying that for not just decades in America, we've been saying that for thousands of years. And the first entity who ever made that statement was Atem, saying Asase is his hand, his right hand, so to speak. So this is what the text is talking about. They're talking about the procreative fluid and the hand, talking about Asaset of Atem. Taz, company of divinity, so-called Ennead, is before him as teeth and lips. They are the seminal fluid, or the procreative power, and the hand of Atem, meaning Atem and Asase Nebethetepet. For the company of the divinities of Atem came into being through himself and Asase Nebethetepet, the company of the divinity. Shu, Tefnu, Geb, Nut, Asar, Aset, Set, Nebethet. What they call the Ennead, the 9 divinities and so forth of Anu, or so-called Heliopolis. It says they came into being not through his semen and fingers, through him and his hand, which is Asase Nebethetepet, the great mother. She's called Asase Afur, the great earth mother, fertile earth mother in Akan culture, and Odumankuma is Atem in Akan culture. We still worship Odumankuma, which is Atumukopa or Atemu Kepra, Atem Kepra. We still call him Odumankuma in Akan, and his wife, Earth Mother. We still worship her in Akan culture today, invoke her every single day by the same name, and him by the same name, that we've been invoking them for thousands of years non-stop. So the Ennead, or the Paut of the divinities of Atem, came into being through the union of Atem with Asase Nebethetepet. But the Ennead, or the Paut, is the teeth and the lips in this mouth which pronounce the name of everything from which Shu and Tefnu came forth and which gave birth to the Ennead, or the Paut. Why do they call the divinities created by Ptah, the teeth and lips. We said Heru is in the heart. What you desire within your heart is welling up in your heart. You have something on your heart that you want to communicate, and then you go to somebody and let them know what's on your heart. Whatever's in your heart is generated there, and then you use your tongue to pronounce enunciate what is in your heart. Because how else would somebody know unless they're clairvoyant or can attune to you spiritually? So you utilize your tongue to speak what is in the heart, and through the tongue, you are able to convey what is going on internally. But it's not just the tongue. The tongue can begin to enunciate, but the teeth and the lips finish the process. They formulate the terms. If you didn't have teeth and lips, if you just had a tongue and you tried to pronounce words, you would sound crazy. You would be trying to pronounce the words, you would be the sounds would come out, and the tongue moving up and down is causing a shift in the air, moving from the trachea and so forth, and the sound vibrations, the waves of the sound vibrations moving back and forth. But you need the teeth and the lips to give the final concretization of those sounds so they can be pronounced properly, be enunciated properly. So what is in the heart and coming through the tongue is concretized through the teeth and the lips. And this is why Atem, company of divinities, or Paut, or so-called Ennead, are the teeth and lips of Ptah. They concretize or finish what Ptah has begun through his heart and tongue. All right. Sight, hearing, breathing, they report to the heart, and it makes every understanding come forth. As to the tongue, it repeats what the heart has devised. Thus, all the deities were born, and Ptah's, and the Ennead, or so-called Paut, the companies of the divinities, was completed, where every word of the divinity came about through what the heart devised and the tongue commanded. Thus, all the faculties were made, and all the qualities determined. They that make all foods and all provisions through his word, to him who does what is loved, to him who does what is hated. Thus, life is given to the peaceful, and death is given to the criminal, meaning we kill criminals based on the direction of the deity Ptah. We don't embrace them and show them love and turn the other cheek. Life is given to the peaceful, death is given to the criminal. That is divine execution, the death penalty. And we've dealt with that in numerous broadcasts, but there's a cosmological foundation for divine law and divine hate, the killing of our enemy. All labor, all crafts are made, the action of the hand, the motion of the leg, the movements of all the limbs, according to this command which is devised by the heart, then comes forth on the tongue and creates the performance of everything. Thus it is said of Ptah, he who made all and created the divinity. And he is Tasanen, who gave birth to the divinity, talking about their form. Ra and Ra'at bring everything into being out of nothing. And once things are brought into being, then Ptah fashions them into specific form. You can bring, if you have clay, that's a substance. It had to be brought from somewhere. But once you get that clay and you have it in front of you now you want to fashion it into a specific form. So you fashion it into a bunch of different sculptures. And then you harden those sculptures by placing them in a kiln, in an oven, and now they become specific entities. Ra and Ra'at are the ones who bring the clay into being out of nothing. And once they bring, planets and suns and moons and stars and everything into being out of nothing, then Ptah is the one who fashions them into their specified forms according to that pre-existent pattern that was originally given by Amen and Amenet. All right. So Ptah gave birth to the divinities, meaning he fashioned their forms, and from whom everything came forth, foods, provisions, divine offerings, all good things. Thus it is recognized and understood that he is the mightiest of the divinities. Ptah was satisfied after he had made all things and all divine words. And of course, they're talking about Ptah fashioning the world in the beginning, and once he fashioned everything, then he was satisfied with what he made. Of course, this is where you get the false criminal story from the Bible talking about after the God made everything in the beginning, then he was satisfied with what he made. Now, notice that it says Ptah is fashioning the forms of all the divinities from whom everything came forth, foods, provisions, divine offering, all good things. So coming from the fashioner Ptah, and of course through his teeth and lips, which is the Atem, Asaset, Nebedetepe, and the company of divinities under them, Shu, Tefnu, Geb, Nut, Athar, Aset, Set, Nebedet, and so forth. So fashioning the bodies of the divinities, coming forth from them, foods, provisions, divine offerings, all good things. So if these are the things that we need, all our foods, provisions, divine offerings, all good things, that includes medicines and clothes and everything else, then from the divinities are the various industries that will be given birth. And when we align ourselves with the forces in creation, we also align ourselves with those things, foods, provisions, all the things that we need, all good things, and we must reproduce those things and sustain those things and make those things for our people, part of an industrialized process. That is part of that Hoodoo economy we were talking about. Next it says, he gave birth to the gods, the deities, the goddesses and gods, talking about fashioning their forms. Again, Ra and Ra'et are the creator and creatress. They create and fashion the spirits of all the other divinities, bring them into being and birth all of them, but then Ptah gives them their specific form. Ra and Ra'et give them life itself. Once they are alive and exist, Ptah gives them a specific form. Just like once you're conceived, the sperm and ovum unite, now you're a living entity, but then you have to take shape, and that shape is constant. You're constantly being fashioned and formed and shaped and so forth, going from that zygote to the embryo and stretching out, and the nervous system coming into being, the essane, and then the cherema, the drummer, which is the heartbeat, and then the abrafo titire, immune system, and you're constantly developing over those 40 weeks, constantly being formed. That form is being fashioned on a regular basis. That's the Ptah constantly fashioning that form, constantly refining and everything else. So Ra and Ra'et bring things into being, bring the spirits into being, give them life and so forth, and Ptah fashions their form according to a pre-existent pattern given by Amen and Amenet, the great mother, great father and great mother. So this is what they mean when he said he gave birth to the divinities, talking about their form. He made the towns. He established the nomes. So he's fashioning the towns, fashioning the nomes, fashioning the earth itself, fashioning the features of earth itself, the divisions of earth itself, the administrative divisions of the nations and so forth, fashioning the towns. He placed the deities in their shrines. Some divinities operating through mountains, some divinities operating through rivers, some divinities operating through red land and desert and so forth, some divinities operating through black soil, some divinities operating through the clouds and so forth. All these various natural shrines in creation, Ptah fashion, he established their shrines. He placed them in their shrines, giving them their specific form so they can take up residence in those natural shrines. He settled their offerings, determining what specific kinds of offerings they are to be given. He established their shrines. He made their bodies according to their wishes. Thus the deities entered into their bodies of every wood, every stone, every clay, everything that grows upon him in which they came to be. Thus were gathered to him all the divinities and their kau, or their kas, their souls, content, united with the Lord of the two lands, the great throne that gives joy and so forth, and they go on with the other honorific titles. So he fashions their natural shrines in creation, but then when we establish specific shrines in our locale, every kind of stone, every kind of wood, every kind of clay, he's fashioning, and he's behind the fashioning of them. So when we engage in ritual practice, and we sculpt stone, or we sculpt wood, or we sculpt clay, and put those on the shrines, that is part of industry. That's part of the Hoodoo economy. When we utilize candles, we utilize bowls, utilize incense, utilize various different things, certain kinds of clothing, certain colors of clothing that have to be dyed, certain kinds of fabric, whether it's cotton or wool or whatever, it has to be procured, it has to be sewn together. We need seamstresses and tailors and so forth. Everything we need to function, as well as engage in ancestral religious practice, medicine, foods to give offerings for the divinities, those must be procured and prepared and so forth. The kinds of vessels they need to be placed in, the kind of drums that we use, everything that we need becomes a part of an industry. That is part of that hoodoo. This is what we're talking about. So that's the cosmological foundation for this whole nation of industrializing the different fields of endeavor that we are naturally inclined towards based on the Abosom that govern us, the patriclan and matriclan divinities that govern us, as well as the ancestral clans that we are a part of, which includes what specific dietary and social etiwadye or taboos we have. There's certain things we can incorporate within our clothing, within our sculptures, within our medicine, within our foods, and so forth, that other groups can't, based on their dietary and social taboos, based on their ancestors. The way we fashion certain chairs and sculptures and staff and bowls and certain kinds of cloth and how it's used and how it's made and how it's stamped and making the stamp so that the cloth can be stamped. Every single thing that we touch or use or engage in is given birth through some form of industry, and that is part of the economy. So when we have an ancestral religious practice, we're talking about hoodoo, for example, all these things must be made. It's all part of the, really, Okom, talking about possession, talking about hunger, the desire for things that we need to sustain ourselves, heal ourselves, cure ourselves, protect ourselves, defend ourselves, govern ourselves, hold ourselves, house ourselves, and so forth. All these different things must be taken into account. Of course, the whites and their offspring, once they recognize in the past, and some of them, of course, they continue today, they saw that hoodoo is the Akan religion. We engaged in that practice. We came on the plantations, those who kept the practice going, of course, in the blood circles, were empowered by the Abosom to wage war against the whites and their offspring, massacre them. Of course, as it said, kill the criminal, give death to the criminal. We waged war, forced abolition, forced emancipation, brought enslavement to an end in North America. Those practicing hoodoo as well as juju and voodoo and Gullah Geechee tradition and everything else. Whites and their offspring sought to crush that, but they were not able to, so they introduced to some of our people who would latch onto it, Christianity. They decided in the so-called 1800s, 12,800s, that they were going to begin to teach Christianity to make our people better slaves. So you have the religious instruction of the Negro. And one of our vendors, Kamal Makesi Tahuti, has written the book, How to Make a Negro Christian, where he goes into that detailed document where they lay out in a meticulous fashion how they were going to instruct the Negroes in Christianity so they can make them docile slaves. He's going to be one of the vendors at the event, at the Hoodoo Mind event. So they introduced Christianity, but of course some of our people did not go along with that. So our people continue to engage the practice of hoodoo and so forth. Even after the end of enslavement, we're still utilizing hoodoo to engage that freedom, that mindset. So some of our people, and once enslavement was over physically, they saw the whites and offspring were still trying to engage that criminal, economic, and social enslavement. Some of our people migrated away and began an entire movement of incorporating all black towns. So we're establishing all black towns. We did a couple of broadcasts on those independent Afro-Akani communities, where we began to establish these all black towns, and many of them still exist, been over 100 years to this day. One of them we talked about, North Brentwood, Maryland, established about nearly 100 years ago and is still in existence today, right outside of D.C., and they have their own mayor and police force and everything else. So we started that process. We continued our religious practice. Some people still were caught up with the whites and their offspring. Some of our people decided to free themselves. Some of the ones in the past who freed themselves from enslavement became quote-unquote maroons, and warriors and so forth, and established independent nations and waged war against slave plantations and white slavers after enslavement was over. Some of the descendants of those people who had that same mindset because they were still practicing ancestral religion when they saw that the economy was still a slave economy, even though the whites and their offspring said, hey, you're free, but you don't own any land, so you can be a sharecropper, you can still work for us. So it was still enslavement, just in a different fashion. And then they began to introduce white culture and Christianity to enslave the minds of the people. Some of our people escaped or freed themselves or liberated themselves from that kind of enslavement and set up independent black towns and continue to practice our religious practice. Some of our people escaped that nonsense, and we decided to migrate, the Great Migration, up north to get away from the South and reestablish ourselves in the South. So that was like a maroon movement in that regard as well, getting away from the old places where enslavement had taken place. I went very far north, further and further north into North America, even to places where enslavement had never taken place, trying to reestablish ourselves in those new regions. Our people continue to practice hoodoo. The whites and their offspring trying to force our people to embrace Christianity. Some of our people not embracing that because they knew it was criminal. Then the whites and their offspring begin to move into the quote-unquote hoodoo economy and try to take the hoodoo economy over. So now you have white so-called Jews and others beginning to sell in their curios, in their little stores, hoodoo products and fake hoodoo products, hot whip powder and love potions, and they're advertising them in magazines and saying this is a hoodoo magic spell and all you need is this powder and you can take over somebody's life and take over somebody's husband, and all of a sudden you have this huge industry, whites and their offspring parasitically feeding off of our culture, manufacturing all these quote-unquote hoodoo products and selling them first amongst themselves and then later on against brainwashed black people who are accepting what the whites and their offspring are saying and purchasing quote-unquote hoodoo products today. So, and you still have crackers doing the same thing right now, selling these fake hoodoo products, like a large hoodoo site, LuckyMojo.com, run by a cracker, pretending like they're involved in hoodoo and so forth. Just criminal-type crackers lying about the culture, pretending they're involved in culture, writing books and all kinds of things. So they're writing books about hoodoo and having festivals and selling products and selling them all around the world and having trainings and hoodoo certifications, and you go through, spend thousands of dollars to go through their certification process. So you could be a hoodoo man and a hoodoo woman when you come out of a white cracker pseudo certification process that you spent thousands of dollars to go through, which is pure nonsense. And they attempt to pretend that hoodoo is dealing with Native American folk magic and European folk magic, and it's a blend of that. Hoodoo has nothing to do with pseudo Native Americans or crackers at all. It is the Akan ancestral religion brought into the blood circles, into North America, in the blood circles of our people, uncut and unchanged for thousands of years, and it is still within our blood circles today. It is based on reincarnation through Akan clan. Of course, later on, the term hoodoo would be used as a catch-all term for anything dealing with ancestral culture, African religion, so-called black magic. They would try to demonize the culture, make it evil, make the term hoodoo evil, make it synonymous. Hoodoo, juju, and voodoo, they would try to make all those terms evil. When in reality, they are terms from different languages. Hoodoo is Akan, juju is Yoruba, voodoo is on and Ebe, and they all talk about divinity. That's what they're all about. The whites and offspring who sought to demonize them and also make them all the same term. So, and this is one reason we wrote the book, to show what hoodoo really is and its cultural foundation, which is Akan culture. So you have people who are marketeering, as they're called, marketeering fake hoodoo products in their crack. And then you have Negroes jumping on board and participating and then beginning to incorporate fake practices as part of hoodoo, Mexican stuff and European pseudo metaphysics and numerology and utilizing the Bible for all these different things. Of course, the Abosom, the Nsamanfo have nothing to do with the Bible. That has absolutely nothing to do with hoodoo at all. That's when brainwashed people embrace that nonsense. Of course, in our book, Kuku Tuntun, the Ancestral Jurisdiction, we prove conclusively that Jesus, Moses, Muhammad, Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, Solomon, Sheba, Menelik, Yahweh, Allah, all of these characters are fictional cartoon characters who never existed in any form whatsoever. So there's no such thing as the Bible being part of hoodoo. When people talk that nonsense, they've embraced the corruption of our culture. They haven't embraced reality. Of course, we brought that reality out, and anybody can download that free book. That's one of our 16 books, and all 16 books are free downloads as ebooks, and then we also sell the softcover version. So all this marketeering is taking place, and you have people making millions of dollars selling fake hoodoo products. This is how they make their living, and crackers have been doing that for decades. It's a fake hoodoo economy. We have a real hoodoo economy, and the same is true of juju and voodoo and so forth. When you engage in your ancestral religious practices and just your culture in general, which is animated by your ancestral religious practice, you are naturally inclined to begin to produce everything you need with regard to that practice in your life in general, and those, of course, become industries. So we begin to take these things back. We engage our ancestral religious practices, we reject the nonsense of the white snare offspring, and we seek to incorporate and produce the things that we need on every level, whether it's body products, hair care products, medicine, clothing, everything. We try to reproduce ourselves from a natural cultural foundation, a cosmological foundation, not just snatching things, making things up and pulling things out of the air and just, selling them, reselling them for some exorbitant price. So this is what we're talking about with regard to the hoodoo economy and the socioeconomic development through hoodoo. Now, you want to look in the chat room real quick. If you have a question or comment on the phone line, hit the number 1. We have a call we're going to take. We're going to look in the chat room as well.
My question.
Okay, Michiamo on the phone line. You had a question or comment?
My question, in regardless to the culture, ancestor culture, isn't it ironic that the Achiwadafos, from what I'm hearing, they try to, I guess because some people are coming to understanding of awareness, that they're now twisting certain things in regards to certain cultures. Like you said before, talking about, say, the Bible, there's something talking about Bible. I guess what they say represent hoodoo, but really and truly, the Bible never did specify anything about hoodoo or anything like that. So I'm not sure where people are getting that. I'm not sure if these are like little games that people are still trying to hold sacred by mixing this Christianity with African real culture. That's my question.
Right. So it all comes from the Achiwadefo, and when we utilize the term Achiwadefo, Achide means taboo, Chi means to hate, Adie means thing, object, deed, or entity. So Achide, Achiwadie means those things that are divinely hated, prohibited, hated by the Abosom, the Deities, the ancestral spirits, by the supreme being. So Achiwadie are taboos, and Achiwadefo or Achiwadefo, the people foe who are divinely hated. Remember in the text of Ptah, talking about life is given to the peaceful, death is given to the criminal. So we're talking about divine hate. So we utilize the term in our common mind, Achiwadefo, for the white snare offspring, spirits of disorder who are divinely hated. So it comes from the Achiwadefo, the white snare offspring, the spirits of disorder, trying to force the Bible, Quran, Jewish nonsense, Jewish Kabbalism, pseudo-mysticism, Hermeticism, all of this nonsense, perversity, trying to force that into hoodoo. You have Negroes talking about European folk magic. Of course, for example, we did the article on the hoodoo doll baby, the Ndu Akuaba, or the hoodoo doll baby. Just like in Vodou, they use the Vodou doll coming from the Nkisi in the Congo and so forth, with the nails stuck into the sculpture in the Nkisi or the Nkonde, and then you also have, the so-called hoodoo doll. If we didn't have wood that we could, create a sculpture, we weren't allowed to use, knives and things like that, or sculpture, we began to utilize little dolls that we would sew and put those pins in them as opposed to nails and so forth, but we were still engaged in the same process in Vodou. But then you also have in hoodoo, you have what they call the hoodoo doll baby. We did an article talking about the Akuaba doll from Akan culture is the Undu, Hoodoo, Akua Ba, literally meaning doll, Akua, baby, Ba. Undu, Akua Ba is the doll baby. The whites and offspring will say, actually, the Hoodoo doll baby came from European Germanic folk magic, which is an absolute lie, pure stupidity. And they know it's a lie, but they know that some of our people have not studied our culture, so they will end up believing that it came from Germanic folk magic, and that was their contribution to Hoodoo. Some of them will say that Hoodoo is mainly made up of European and Native American, quote-unquote, folk magic, and then African Americans learned about that and then just did it in their own way, and that's what Hoodoo is, which is an absolute lie. Germanic or European or Native American pseudo-folk magic has absolutely nothing to do with Hoodoo at all. And the same thing is true when people are trying to introduce the Bible, the Psalms, and any aspect of the Bible, any aspect of Christianity, any aspect of Judaism, Islam, or any of that nonsense has absolutely nothing to do with our culture. The whites and offspring seek to pollute our culture with these fake religions. They've been doing that whenever they could for the past couple of thousand years. And they will not stop engaging in the process of seeking to pollute our culture until we make them extinct, because they are spirits of disorder, incarnate as spirits of disorder. They are cancerous cells within the body of black humanity, and they will not cease to operate as cancerous cells until they are totally eradicated from the body, without exception. So yes, their method and their mode is always the same. Anything they come in contact with, they will seek to corrupt and to pollute and destroy. And once we recognize that reality, recognize that these spirits of disorder are the enemy and everything they project is perverse, we will never seek to embrace anything they put forward. We only seek to embrace what comes from our own people and from the Abosom they govern.
One thing, in regards to the shrine, if say people are carrying, like, say they're on the road or anything like that, do they have to, like, say the replica of the shrines they make that's totally their own, do they have to, like, take a piece, a part of that their original shrine to cover it and carry with them to, still have that same effect?
Now, you mean if somebody's just taking a trip somewhere?
Like if anybody's, like, let's say they're no longer in the house and they're on the road or somewhere, and they want to engage in the ritual and talk to the the ancestors. I mean, don't they have to, like, say if they set their shrine already, when they have to, like, how when they do construct it, they'll take like a piece of that's part of that shrine and, like, wrap it up like you said before and carry it with them, like not the whole thing, but like some piece so they could still have that effect, or something like, I don't know how it's supposed to go in regards to the actual shrine of the house to the one they carry on the road.
Right. So now a person does not have to take something from their shrine at the home if they're going on a trip. Some people will. There are a couple of things you can do. Some people will have, like, say they had a stone on their shrine and they'll take that stone with them when they go out of town and when they're in the hotel. And once the conference is over or whatever, and they're home alone in the hotel, they take their stone out, set up a portable little shrine with the white cloth and the stone, and they'll pour libation and do their thing that way. Some people do that. Some people will have maybe their necklace or their bracelet or whatever, and they leave their bracelet or necklace on the shrine to, quote-unquote, charge it. And then when they go out, they wear their necklace or whatever, and they utilize that as a portable shrine when they go out somewhere. Some people, instead of doing that, they'll just have a specific small bowl and a small stone and a small cloth. That's something that they take whenever they travel, specifically as a portable shrine that they take, and it doesn't have to come from their parent shrine. It's just something that they use themselves. And of course, you can always, wherever you are, you can always go outside and pour libation at the base of a tree or at a river or out in nature. Even if you don't have a specific implement from your shrine, you can always go into the shrines of, creation itself and engage that process. So it's done different ways, but you don't have to take something from your shrine to take with you. You can if you want to, if your Nsamanfo direct you to, but you don't have to.
All right. Madasi, thank you again for answering my question.
Okay. Yeni Aseda. Okay. So, and we just wanted to check the chat room real quick, make sure we didn't miss anything. One of the comments in the chat room, I just wanted to mention that I have tried some of the products that were featured on the broadcast. Asase Heels, whipped shea butter, and 4 Elements for nature, or 4 Elements peanut rubbing oil. So that would be Elements for Nature. They are great products and do what they say it would do. Products of integrity. So we appreciate that. And those are 2 of the, let's put that link right back up in the chat room, 2 of the businesses that will be featured as vendors at the EGUA marketplace at the Hoodoo Mind Festival. So when you go to the Okom Economic Development Model page, and we'll put that link back in the chat room, you will see many of these businesses will be at the event. So one of them that she talked about, Asase Hills by Ama Asase Ajay, and we are trying to get Ama. As a matter of fact, she will most likely be presenting at the event. Asase Hills Natural Blends for Good Health. So we're working on that. We're going to have an update on that very soon. Elements for Nature, which is the other business that was mentioned. Elements for Nature, they will have a table. They are the sole independent distributor and have the patents and everything for George Washington Carver's health and beauty products. And when she was talking about the peanut rubbing oil and so forth, they're the ones who are licensed to carry his products and distribute his products, his formula. So that's very special for us, and we're glad that they were able to come on board because, of course, we did a broadcast on Nananom Nsamanfo, the name we utilized for our great elder, George Washington Carver. Of course, he would go out into nature, as he said himself, communicate with the spirits in nature, learn directly from them, and go into the laboratory and replicate what he learned from them. And this is why he was able to transform agriculture in this country and around the world, not because he went to a university and learned about agriculture, but because he learned directly from the spirits in nature. This is that hoodoo working directly through one of our people. And he produced hundreds of products from sweet potatoes and peanuts and everything else. So people know about George Washington Carver. Of course, you can read more about him, but they are the ones who have the actual license to sell his specific formulas for his health and beauty products, and they will be at the event as well. So we have a number of different vendors, and we're going to have some of them on the show next week, because next Wednesday for EGUA Marketplace, we'll have some of them calling in, talking about their businesses and so forth, because the event is actually next Saturday. Not this Saturday, but next Saturday, October 17th, Hoodoo Mind, Hoodoo Nation Festival, free event all day, 12 p.m. to 7 p.m. in Washington, D.C. All of the information is on the Hoodoo Mind page. Please share that information. We also have a Hoodoo Mind page on Facebook. Come out and shop with our vendors and the presentations we will be giving. Again, as we said earlier, for the people who came in a little bit later, we're going to have the itinerary posted very soon for all of the speakers once we confirm everyone. We will be doing a presentation on Hoodoo Akan Ancestral Religion in North America. We are working to have Ama Asase Ajay of Asase Heals, which we were just talking about, doing a presentation on her natural medicines and so forth, tinctures that she has formulated, very similar to what Nananom Nsamanfo has done, creating these products and so forth to heal our people. So we're working on the itinerary. We will have that posted. We'll have a couple of other speakers as well, and then we'll have a list of all of the vendors. We have about 3 spaces left for vending. So if you would like to vend at the event, the vending table, we provide a 6-foot table and 2 chairs. The vending fee for all day is $25. So when you go to the Hoodoo Mind page on the website, you will see the vendor registration application. You can submit that to us as soon as possible. Of course, those last few spaces, first come, first serve. And then we also extended the date for the submissions if you would like to place an ad for your business, organization, or institution in our Hoodoo Mind Journal. or a personal ad in the Hoodoo Mind Journal to support the work we're doing, or talk about, promote something positive with regard to ancestral culture, a message to the community, because this journal will be given freely. It's a full color journal, articles about hoodoo, ancestral culture, healing, and so forth, but also a directory of these various businesses, organizations, and institutions that we have, dealt with over the course of these number of months, as well as the vendors list and everything. That journal will be given free to everybody who comes to the event. And, of course, there will be a free ebook version as well, so thousands of people will see that journal. If you place an ad for your business, thousands of our people here and around the country and around the world, as a matter of fact, because it will be, the ebook version will be placed on the site, and that will be permanently on the site. So thousands of people, as we mentioned earlier, over the past year, we got 1.34 million hits on our website, so you're going to have thousands of people looking at your ad. Those people who actually get the soft cover version of the journal when they come and share it with friends, family, co-workers to the various cities that they go back to once they leave the event. So if you would like to place an ad, whether it's a personal ad or a business ad, organization ad, institution ad, go directly to the page, the Hoodoo Mind page, in the on our website, on 1/4, and it's a magazine-sized journal, 8.5 by 11. So a 1/4 page ad is $25, 1/2 page ad is $35, full page ad. So we're taking those submissions up only up until October 9th. We did extend the date. We will be completing the journal this week. So we need those JPEG files in by the 9th so that we can insert them into the journal so that then we can begin to print the softcover versions. We need to have enough time to print and account for any possible delays in printing or anything else. We want to make sure we have everything ready in time or prior to the event date. So we need those JPEG files in as soon as possible. The very last day is October 9th, but we prefer that they get in prior to that. So you can check that out. So there are only 11 minutes left in the broadcast, so we don't really have to go all the way up to 11. We just want to cover that information, talk about the nature of the Hoodoo economy rooted in our ancestral culture and our religious practice, and of course that extends to any form of Akan ancestral religious practice. There are industries that are born out of our ancestral religious practice. We need to control those industries. This is a Hoodoo economy, Juju economy, Hoodoo economy, Riri economy, Gullah-Geechee economy, and so forth. But these things sustain us. We need to take control. When we talk about economic development, socioeconomic development, and so forth, we need to be in absolute control of that. And it's not just a political position or a stance. It is rooted in our spiritual culture. It's rooted in our philosophy. It is rooted in our ancestral religion. We do not separate our ancestral religion, which is aligning with the supreme being through the agency of the deities and ancestral spirits. We can't separate that from our politics, from our socioeconomic development. We can't separate that from any aspect of our lives. The whites and their offspring have brainwashed our people to say, well, we don't need to focus on religion because that's going to separate us. We've heard some of our leaders say that in the past and even today, because they were still brainwashed with white culture to a various degree. So they're still trying to separate religion from culture, religion from spiritual, from social and economic development, separated from every aspect of life. That's a trick by the whites and their offspring to keep us off balance. Nothing gets separated from our ancestral religion. First, you embrace your ancestral religious practice. What that means is you're getting in harmony with divine law. That simply means ancestral religion, or Nananom, no matter what expression it takes, is the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance. That means through ritual we incorporate those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to incorporate in order to harmonize our thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order. And through ritual, we reject those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to reject, to repel, to hate, in order to restore balance to our thoughts, intentions, and actions, and thus restore balance to our lives. to realign ourselves with divine order. So ancestral religion is the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance. Align every thought, every intention, and every action with divine order so we can eradicate disorder in our lives on a consistent basis. That includes thoughts, intentions, and actions about industry, about economy, about politics, about social interaction. Everything is impacted by our ancestral religious practice. You don't separate that. In reality, you cannot. If you seek to separate your ancestral religion from socio-political and economic activity, then what you are doing is engaging in white culture. So we need to understand that. And this is why we use the image of the Nserewa, the cowrie shell, as the image for this particular broadcast, because those were used as media of exchange, so-called money, in many parts of Afuraka because of their nature. They're also used for divination. These are the shells of specific marine life. So there was life in these shells, and then the shells are used for divinatory practices that carry the energy of specific Abosom. They're utilized for divinatory practices, but then they're utilized for media of exchange. Because when we're exchanging between one another, and we're utilizing this natural aspect of creation, the shell that came from marine life, we're exchanging energy with one another. Not in the nonsensical, talking about currency and energy and so forth, but this is life. These shells are consecrated to specific Abosom. When we cast the shells, we can learn from the forces in nature and from the Nsamanfo what's taking place in someone's life through divination, what things need to be changed, how to align with order, how to realign with order, and so forth, showing people where they have made mistakes and what they need to do to get back on track and so forth. That's a media of communication, and this is why they could be used for money, because it's spiritual. It's a media of communication, a media of exchange, a media of exchange of value and worth. You give the shells for, and then you receive in return for this divinatory. Those shells are cast, and what you receive in return is messages from the Abosom and Nsamanfo. If it's dealing with, the economy, then you give those shells, and what's received in return is the product and or service you need to fulfill a specific aspect of your, functioning creation in reality. It leads to that. So this is why we utilize that symbol. Okay. And, okay, so we just saw there was a question in the chat room. So, and eventually what we will be having this Hoodoo Nation Festival, the Hoodoo Mind, will be a yearly event, and of course it will get larger and larger. People will be coming. Already there are going to be people who already said they're coming out to the event, and over time there will be more and more people coming out, and eventually it will be a 2-day festival. This year it will be a 1-day festival, but eventually it will be a 2-day festival, and then people will come out, and make a weekend of the festival. Some people will take that particular day off of work, like that Friday or maybe that Monday. They'll fly into D.C. and have a Hoodoo Mind weekend and so forth. And we'll have more presenters, more vendors and so forth. Eventually, when we have our center, we will have the event on our own land at our center, and it will be a larger event. So people will have the opportunity to come out and participate. And this will not be the only festival. We will be having more events throughout the course of the year, in the fall, in the spring, and in the summer, large communal events where people will be able to come out and commune who are engaged in the same ritual practices and are on the same page culturally. So, Yadate for that comment in the chat room. So the only last piece is for those who like to support the work that we are doing. Recall that we do, as we said, we have published 16 books on various aspects of ancestral religion, culture, ritual practices, revolution, resolution, cosmology, and so forth, truthery, identity. So, for example, Afuraka, the origin of the term Africa, Boer means head, Kokobo, showing that dissexuality, homosexuality never existed in ancient Kemet, Anidaho, proving the origin of the term God, and as well as showing that Nigga and Naga and Negat have nothing to do with divinity and all of that. So we, a number of different books we have published. Of course, the Kuku Tundum, showing that Jesus, Moses, Muhammad, Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael never existed. The ebook versions of all 16 of our books are free. If you would like the soft cover versions, we do print them on our own printers in-house in color. They range between $8 and $11. Any order of 10 books or more, automatically 30% off. So, for example, the first 10 books of our 16 books, that 10-book set is $66 for 10 books. So the entire 16-book set is $105. So that's less than $10 a book. So when you go to the page, you can order one or more of our books. We also have our Nhoma monthly subscription option. If you would like to receive one or more books per month, every month, when you go and go to the option, you make, say, a $15 donation, and you click recurring donation in PayPal, then that means you'll automatically be making an automatic donation of $15 a month on the same date of the month every month. You can stop it whenever you want to, just like going into PayPal and clicking cancel. But each month you receive one or more of our books in the mail, depending on the amount that you make recurrent. So some people will do $15 and receive one book per month every month. We already have 16 books out, so at least for the next 16 months, they're going to receive a new book in the mail. If they did $30 a month, they receive a couple of books in the mail for the next 8 months. We will be having more books coming out this year anyway, so we'll have many more than 16 books by the end of the year. So, and some coming up very soon. So if you support the work that we are doing, please go to the soft cover books page, the Nhoma page on our website, NHOMA, Nhoma Publications page, and you can access the soft cover book from there. And you'll also see the links to our GoFundMe campaigns for our Akongwa Suyadine, our institution. We're establishing permanent headquarters in the D.C. region for our institution of learning, healing, training, employment, and entrepreneurship. We already have the entrepreneurship piece. If you would like to sell our soft cover books as an independent, entrepreneur, you wouldn't be working for us. You're purchasing the books from us wholesale and selling them retail. We already have a few people doing that. Employment, automatically you can come to us and begin to sell our books immediately. That information, including a video and a document, is on the publications page as well, if you want to start that process. So whether you want to support our institution or support through purchasing the books or become a distributor of our books or establish a study group, we have a FECU page, a Nananom Ancestral Religion study group page as well. All of that information is on the website. Go to the Nhoma page, the publications page on our website, and you can get that information. And please share the Hoodoo Nation Festival page as well. And the videos, we will be placing this video of this broadcast on the page as well. We have 2 more that are there as well. Please continue to share. And Yedase for those who have been sharing already. So, again, Yedase, we thank you for tuning into the broadcast. And Yebeshi Abio, we will meet again. That's all.